Great to be here, and thank you, Minister, for wonderful comments about this wonderful place and its biophilic qualities. I have a tendency in doing talks to have too many slides, and I think I've done it again today. And I go through my slideshow and try to take away slides, and I add slides. That's often how it works. I thought I might take away slides about Singapore, but many of you have come from other places and perhaps don't fully appreciate the power of this city and the great model that it has become, or is an emerging model of a biophilic city. So I left the slides about Singapore in the presentation today. So my goal is to get you comfortable using the word biophilia and the word biophilic, and to explore a bit what this concept of biophilic cities is. What is the vision? What is the potential, the possibility? And for me, I am trained as an urban planner, and we know this is the era of cities. We are a globe of cities. We are profoundly rethinking the very nature of cities. We want them to be dense and compact if they're going to be sustainable and resilient. If we want to reduce our carbon emissions and create livable environments where we can walk and take public transit, reduce our ecological footprints, they have to be compact and dense. Does that mean that then we can't have that connection, that contact with nature? Nature and cities together is a question mark there, but my answer is a definitive yes. And actually Singapore, I think, is a living example of the two together. So to begin, the definition of biophilia. Many of you know it already, and you feel it already when you come in contact with nature. It is this belief that we have an innate affiliation with the natural world. We believe that the contact with nature, the connection with nature, is not something optional. It's absolutely essential to leading a happy, healthy, and meaningful life. So to have a life in a city, you have to have connection with nature. Here's a definition from E.O. Wilson. E.O. Wilson, Ed Wilson, professor at Harvard University. He wasn't the first person to use the term biophilia, but he's really coined it in the way that we know it today. This notion that we've co-evolved with nature, and that we carry with us our ancient brains, and that we have this innate reaction, this innate affiliation. We need that nature. And that nature has to be, it can't just be a distant place. It can't just be a national park or some place that we visit on a holiday. It has to be all around us. It has to be integrated into the places where we live. It's the second image of Ed Wilson. The human species has grown up in nature. Very, very true. So we want to design and plan cities that don't think of nature as an afterthought, as the minister suggests, but makes nature that center, the center core of where we start in designing cities. We have a lot of evidence, and I think on a personal level, this is probably true for most of you. What are we drawn to? What are the things that we react to in the world? They're living things. They're flowers, they're trees, they're butterflies and birds, and the sounds of those things, the textures, the images that we have around us are quite important in terms of health in every sense, but especially our mental health. So we could spend the whole time. By the way, I'm hoping someone can give me a 5-minute warning, if you would, when I'm about to run out of time. Can you? Thank you. So we could spend the entire time talking about the evidence, because it's really quite impressive, and it is growing almost weekly, it seems. And here is just a little sampling of some of the evidence. This is an image from, or a recent Bioscience article, Watching Birds Near Your Home is Good for Your Health, showing the connection, the relationship between green neighborhoods. The greener the neighborhood, the less depression, anxiety, and stress in this particular study. But I thought it would be interesting just to sample studies in the last month or so. Journal of Adolescent Health, so the relationship between depression in adolescence, the reduction of that rate of depression in neighborhoods that are greener. A study coming out of New Zealand showing reductions in childhood asthma in neighborhoods that have more nature. Even the reduction of schizophrenia found to be lesser rates of that in neighborhoods that are greener. So we have a lot of evidence, and that evidence has been emerging over a long period of time. Many of you know about the forest bathing work that's come out of Japan. This idea that as you walk through a forest with the dappled light, the sounds, the colors, not a big surprise to us that at the end of that walk, the Japanese have found, your stress hormone levels have gone down. You get a boost to your immune system. They've become so convinced about this that they've established a network of forest bathing stations in cities throughout the country. So we should think of a city as a forest bathing opportunity, bathing ourselves in nature and the nature of cities. So it could be a much longer discussion about the evidence, and we can still quibble about whether it's causal. It is certainly associational. It's certainly a correlation between the presence of nature and lots of things. I was trying to figure out how to display a lot of this evidence, a lot of this research, and there isn't really a very good way to do it. I haven't found an effective strategy, so I started listing things. Nature associated with lower depression and anxiety, I've just said that already, lower levels of stress, improved mood, improved happiness, improved physical activity, lower crime, lower gun violence, reduced social isolation, a huge epidemic of our time, lower childhood asthma, higher creativity. We have evidence now that in the presence of nature, we're more likely to be generous. So we're actually more likely to be better human beings when we have nature around us. That's pretty amazing. I like the last one, increased laughter and joy. So all of this, to me, amounts to this notion of flourishing. To flourish in cities, we really need that nature. That nature has to be all around us. So it brings us to this concept. How do you merge biophilia and the urban and urbanism? And so biophilic cities is the notion that we've been talking about for a few years now. What is a biophilic city? It's a lot like Singapore, cities that connect us to nature. Certainly a lot about biophilic buildings, but I like to say buildings plus. It's all of the things beyond and between the buildings, to paraphrase Jan Gehl a bit there. It's the trees and outdoor environments, birds and wildlife, trails, landscapes, rivers, hydrology, parks, of course. These are cities that connect us, that actively connect us to that nature. So there are nature connections. We're connecting to nature. We're also connecting to each other as a result of having that nature there. It's an urban nature conservation agenda. We're finally recognizing the important role that cities have to play in the conservation, preservation of biodiversity. And it's also about coexistence and care for nature. It's a lot about what nature is doing for us, those ecological services, those mental health benefits, but what are we doing for nature? Well, it's about a vision of a city that's a coexistence, as mentioned by the minister. This idea that we co-occupy the spaces of our city with lots of other creatures, and that we want to coexist with them, and we want to make sure that they can live with us, and our quality of life and our livability is enhanced as a result of that. So we started in 2010 or 11 something called the Biophilic Cities Project at the University of Virginia. That was initially funded by the Summit Foundation in Washington. That led to, in 2013, the creation of an international biophilic cities network. Singapore has played a major role in that network. We are in the midst of growing the network. There are about 20 cities around the world in it now, and we hope to grow it to at least 50 in the next 2 years, and we're very happy that we've been given a generous grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to help us expand that network. And before I forget to say this, if you are from a city where you think you might be interested in joining the network, please do reach out to me or let me know. And we'd love to expand the network and grow the network. The cost of joining is relatively low. The membership, the application requirements are relatively modest. There is a requirement that city councils in those cities adopt a formal resolution or proclamation indicating their intent to join the network and to aspire to becoming a biophilic city. So this is sort of an emerging map of the world and our network, and we want to see that map expand dramatically in the years ahead. Some of the things that we're doing, we're trying to share best practices. We're trying to share the stories between and among cities and the wonderful things that are going on. We've just started an online journal called Biophilic Cities Journal. You can find it on our website, biophilic-cities.org. This is the cover of the first issue. We're up to issue number 3 now. We have been collaborating and developing partnerships with other organizations. This is an image from a recent lecture series that we organized with the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. And the woman on the right actually is Catherine Warner, who is the sustainability director for the city of St. Louis. And she has, in this image, just lectured about the wonderful work that city and our network has done to promote the planting of butterfly gardens, and something that the mayor of that city, then mayor of that city, set targets. He declared that by a certain date there would be 250 butterfly gardens planted in that city, and they're now up to 400, I think, and they're all on an online map. We have been making films, documentary films, about what our cities are doing, and I know some of you have seen this film already, but we started actually with my colleagues in Australia, Peter Newman and Linda Blagg, this film about Singapore. So if you Google Singapore, a biophilic city, you'll see this 50-minute film. It's a wonderful film, we think, and because it tells so many of the great stories of how this city is becoming more biophilic. And thanks to Lena Chan at InParks, I know she's out here somewhere, but she has been our major collaborator in this work. This film has been viewed 106,000 times on YouTube. That doesn't sound like Beyonce or Justin Bieber or something like, we don't have millions of views yet, but it's pretty good. And we're finding that the visual, the telling the stories with film is very important. By the way, this is one section, a wonderful school. This is a fernery in a school where the kids have actually designed and built their own green wall. It's just a beautiful story. So we have a biophilic codes initiative where we're collecting and organizing and cataloging different codes. And the image on the right is actually from San Francisco, which is one of our partner cities as well. And they were the first American city to mandate the installation of green rooftops through their Better Roofs ordinance. They also, the image on the left is from their bird-friendly design guidelines, their standards, so that they now require reflective glass and window treatments to prevent bird strikes in that city. So a number of our cities are adopting codes like that, ordinances, local laws, and we're trying to analyze them, compare them, share them as examples of best practice. So what is a biophilic city? I said it was more than buildings, but this emerging practice of biophilic design is quite exciting, and it's becoming a bit mainstream in the architecture community especially. And many really wonderful examples of how we can design buildings in the interiors of buildings that connect us to the natural world. This is an example from Washington, D.C., the Healy Family Center at Georgetown University, the interior green wall, the bringing natural daylight in, the fireplaces, the biophilic materials, the stone. In this particular lower left image, the connection, the physical and visible connection to the Potomac River in the case of Washington, very important. We've gotten to know Ty Farrow, who's an architect in Canada, and he does wonderful work. And this is a cancer center there, just outside of Toronto. He, in designing this building, asked cancer patients what would be uplifting to them, what would they like to see in the way of building design, interior space design, and they said, we need hope. And he asked them, well, what will give you hope? And they said, things that are alive. Aliveness. So that's at the heart of this biophilic idea. So a lot of work, of course, integrating the nature into health environments and healing environments, and this wonderful KTPH that's actually in the film, very inspiring, and has inspired a lot of other hospital designs in other parts of the world. Wonderful story with a waterfall and a courtyard and multiple levels of green roofs and green window boxes and just about every element of nature that you can think of, including an urban farm on the top of the building. Just a wonderful story. So we believe that a biophilic city is more than buildings, and we have to think about it as what we call a whole of city approach. So it's room or rooftop to region, or rooftop to bioregion, and all of the other scales, all the different levels in between. And we have to think about it as an integrated approach. This is the map here is the green spaces, the green network in Helsinki. So the idea that you can walk out your door where you're living or where you're working and enjoy this connected network and move to increasingly larger green space. So you can move from the center of this dense city all the way out to old growth forests at the edge of the city. So a whole of city approach, continuous and integrated. Minister mentioned integration earlier. Very important. I think in many ways Singapore's done the most. So the idea that a green wall and a green roof connect to a canopy, a forest canopy that connects to a ground level park, and it's this sort of integrated experience of nature all around you. Resilience, I know, is something we're going to talk a lot about at this conference. We believe that just about anything that you could do to make a city biophilic will also make it more resilient. So these are images actually from Portland, Oregon. Portland is one of our partner cities as well. They have just adopted a green rooftop requirement, the second U.S. city to do that. They're probably best known for the ways they're bringing nature into the city through stormwater management and through what they call green streets. And they now have more than 2,000 of these green streets. You see little snippets here, photographs, and actually more than 600 green rooftops already. They've had a green roof density bonus for many years. So we can have biophilic and we can have resilience. In fact, we have to think about the multiple functions that green elements in a city have. So I said this already, but this vision of a biophilic city is one of having nature all around us. And again, it's not just something you can just get once or twice a year on vacation. It has to be integrated into our living and working environments. We have started to think about this in terms of what we call the nature pyramid. I have a colleague, Tanya Dankla-Cobb, who came up with this idea, and we've been applying it to our partner cities, and this is actually a version of it developed by InParks for Singapore with buildings and landscapes that are Singaporean. But the idea here is like the food pyramid that's meant to guide your decisions about a healthy diet. This is the healthy nature diet. So the things at the top of this pyramid may be things kinds of nature that you enjoy, and they might be immersive once or twice a year experiences, but they're maybe more distant, going off to enjoy a national park somewhere. That's wonderful, but it can't be the basis. It can't be the full basis of your healthy nature diet. It has to be the things at the bottom of that pyramid, the things around you, near where you're living and working. So we find that the nature pyramid, actually a number of our cities are preparing their own version of this, and it's been interesting to compare them and use them as a diagnostic tool. So we are finding many of our cities moving in the direction of Singapore. And this is really a compelling part of this vision. For a long time, we had this bifurcated view of cities, right? We can't have, if you've got a city, you can't have nature. We're still sort of in a bifurcation. Within cities, we think that there's nature there. We know there is, but you have to actively seek it out. The idea of walking to the park or walking to the forest. Well, this new notion of a city and a garden suggests that we've got to think about the city as a garden, think about the city as a park. Why should we walk to the park? We are the park. We are living in the park. We're living in the forest. And I think that's really a compelling idea. This is the Park Royal at Pickering Hotel that's become, in such a short period of time, so iconic. Woha, a firm that designed it, but does suggest that we're profoundly rethinking the very nature of buildings and how those buildings connect with other buildings and the spaces around them to create this more holistic, integrative, immersive nature environment. So we're imagining biophilic cities where you're living in nature. You're immersed in nature. You're bathing in nature, to go back to the forest bathing idea. I had the chance to spend some time yesterday with Mun-Sum Wong, the Wo of Woha. And this is another wonderful building that some of you know about, Awasia. And we're very fond of the green plot ratio requirement in Singapore, this landscape replacement policy that you've got to replace at least 100% of the land area, the nature you've lost, at ground level. This building is impressive because it replaces at 1,100% of the ground level nature. So it's a pretty bold building, and its most dramatic feature is this facade mesh. And they have planted 21 species of flowering vines. So I love the vision, the idea of a blooming building in a blooming city. So we need more buildings like this. 25,000 square meters of facade mesh, nearly 1,800 planter boxes, 1,100% green plot ratio. So Mun-Sum Wong was telling me yesterday that his vision for this building is one that would allow squirrels to climb up and find and create habitat. Squirrels and lizards, it's already becoming a home for birds. It's a wonderful space for birds, and anyway, a lovely building. So on the lookout always for cities that are shifting from this bifurcation to this immersive nature vision. I know we have some folks here from Melbourne. We're hoping Melbourne will join our network soon. They have adopted recently a pretty impressive urban forest plan that calls for the doubling of tree canopy coverage by 2040. What's most impressive to me, though, about this strategy is that they explicitly did not want to talk in terms of just planting more trees in the city. Rather, they framed this as a reimagining their city, the city as a city in a forest. And that's really neat. You may have seen the wonderfully creative ideas for engaging the public around trees, which we've been following. So one of the things that they did was to give each tree in the city its own email address, and to suggest that people send an email to their favorite tree, a loving message to their favorite tree, and that's biophilia, love of nature. And in fact, the tree sends back an email. So it's gotten a lot of international attention. So I want to make the point that our vision of a biophilic city is multisensory. So it's not just the ocular, it's not just what you see and experience through your eyes. It's a fully, in this vein of an immersive form of nature, it's also things like sound. So actually I had two little snippets of sound of my favorite songbird from North America, which is a wood thrush. I don't have any way of playing these, of hitting these two buttons. Maybe we can just quickly play a few seconds of the top wood thrush. So when I hear this bird, and I hear it spring and summer, it immediately takes me back to my childhood. I immediately become calmer. It is a profoundly biophilic experience. Can we play? I guess we can't. I don't have. Ooh, that's a bit loud. It's just a wonderful sound, and even now hearing it in this heightened, high volume state takes me back to Virginia and the east coast of the U.S. So maybe play the second one. So the soundscape will be different in every place, right? And this is an Australian raven, like that. It's the real version is better than mine. But so these are wonderful sounds of place, and they're biophilic. That's probably okay. We'll probably probably enough of the Australian raven. And so we have to think about the noise in cities, of course, that's unhealthy and is actually, in fact, masking the natural sounds. And we have to begin to take stock of and celebrate the natural soundscape as part of what makes a biophilic city. So a biophilic city is not just a city that's defined by the presence or absence of nature, it's how engaged are residents in that nature. How much do they care about that nature? How much time is spent outside? How much bird watching is going on? How many species of native flora and fauna can we identify? How much do we really care about that nature? So we've been documenting some wonderful stories. This is a city called Reston that's just joined our network. It's a smaller city, but they, through a nature center and through a really remarkable array of things like bio-blitzes and butterfly counts and dragonfly counts, they have reached a point where half the population in the city has in one way or another been actively involved in nature, enjoying nature, citizen science, being outside. That's a pretty impressive goal, a pretty impressive target to reach. So that's another way that we need to think about what a biophilic city is. So whole of city, we would also say that a biophilic city is one where we connect to nature over the entire course of one's life. So a full life immersion, another way of saying this. So we begin in childhood and we begin at an early age, and we provide opportunities for connection to nature throughout one's life and into the elder years, if you will. This is an image of a wonderful school just outside Atlanta, Georgia. It's the Chattahoochee Hills School. It's a very unique school. We've just been working on a film about it. And the kids don't occupy spaces. It's not just one school building. They're in multiple buildings, and they're prepared to move around and get outside. So every hour they're outside. So they take their math and their science, and they go into the forest, and they have a forest walk. So we've got to start at a very early age in integrating a life of nature. This is a wonderful, that last image. We actually filmed this group of kids as they were telling us about the food they were growing, and several of them indicated an intention to become farmers, which is quite unusual today. But they clearly were benefiting from the nature around them. So that's really important. We've got to look at all the spaces in the city as opportunities for rewilding, and rewilding is another term that we use. This is a wonderful story, Rutas Naturbanas in San Jose. It's an emerging network of 25 kilometers of hiking, walking trails that follow two major rivers that run through the city. And it's essentially rivers in river space that has been forgotten and in some ways left behind. It's a rediscovery. Okay, I'm going to move into my 4 minutes, 5 minutes, or I should stop. 3 minutes, okay. I'm going to quickly just go through, give you the 5-second per slide version. We also need to think about biophilic cities in terms of the equity of access. So sometimes we talk about the birthright of nature. It's not just for residents who have higher incomes. We have to provide nature, that contact with nature, the benefits of nature to everyone living in that city. And that's really important. This is an image from a film that we're making in the US about blue cities, connections to water. And this is actually a program to get kids from underserved neighborhoods in that city on kayaks and on water. They live just a few hundred meters away from the water, but they've never enjoyed it. So equity has to be part of this. We have to find ways to convert the sterile spaces in cities to that aliveness that I mentioned, to rich biodiverse environments. This is a wonderful story we've just made a film about this. Perth in Western Australia, conversion of a very sterile chlorinated water feature into a wonderful natural wetland, basically native biodiverse wetland in the middle of a city. Edmonton, Canada is one of our partner cities. We need to be thinking about how cities can allow for and accommodate the movement of animals through them. So Edmonton has embraced this idea of an ecological network, and it's integrated into their planning, and they're now building wildlife passages. They've just finished their 27th wildlife passage to allow the movement of animals like this coyote through this city. Latest chapter in their story is a wonderful new strategic plan called Breathe. We don't have time to tell you more about it, but very comprehensive mapping of different elements of nature in that city. I think I may stop with this slide. Oh, actually, I'll flip through to the end. But one of the challenges in a biophilic city is getting us outside. So a biophilic city is an outside city. And so Edmonton has actually adopted a winter strategy to get residents outside during the winter months, and to design in ways that do that, including this concept. Lots of cities have freeways, and Edmonton has freezeways, the idea that you might actually be able to skate from home to work. Okay, biophilic Pittsburgh. I will tell you more. Conservation of bats, 1.5 million Mexican free-tailed bats in Austin, Texas. An outdoor Bill of Rights that they've developed. A wonderful story of reconnecting to rivers, and a wild river in Richmond, Virginia. Victoria Gasteiz, capital of the Basque Country, has just daylighted a stream through the center of their city. Wonderful story. Oslo, 2/3 of the city in protected forest. Milwaukee, thinking about how spaces, leftover spaces, can be converted to pocket parks and to production of food under their program called Homegrown. Can we use actually little spaces in the city for parks? Can we reimagine the water around the city? This is my very last slide, I promise. So a biophilic city is a city that loves nature nearby, but it's also caring about the nature far away. So let's not forget the distant nature. And so in that vein, we have been partnering now with the Half Earth Project, to circle back to E.O. Wilson, that suggests that we need to set aside half of the planet for nature. Cities can adjust their ecological footprints and can think about sourcing of food and building materials and energy in ways that protect and enhance nature in other places. So I will stop there. Thank you very much, and please visit biophilic cities.org.